Hello. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Reverend Linda Snyder, the pastor of Middle Church in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, and we are beginning a 40-day journey called Pause, 40 Words for 40 Days. I can't believe it. Can you? Another storm is coming. Even I am tired of snow and sleet, and that's saying something. Remember, I'm a South Florida gal who lived in the never-ending heat and humidity of non-stop summer. I dreamed about having 4 seasons, and I longed to see snow. Are you wishing for spring and cursing that groundhog? Are you weary from COVID and political and social unrest, economic uncertainty, relationship issues? We are living in a blizzard, and few have a safety rope. In his book, A Hidden Wholeness, Parker Palmer relates a story about farmers in the Midwest who would prepare for blizzards by tying a rope from the back door of their house out to the barn. It was a guide to be sure that they could safely return home. Those blizzards would come quickly, and when their full force was blowing, a farmer couldn't see to the end of his or her hand. Many froze to death, disoriented by their inability to see. They wandered in circles. Some froze with their feet very close to the front door, within feet of their front door, never realizing how close they were to safety. If they lost their grip on that rope, it became impossible for them to find their way home. You and I, we're living in a blizzard, and we need a rope to lead us home, to tether us to our Father who art in heaven. God has offered us a rope that will keep us from getting lost, a rope found in an ancient practice called the daily office. Now, the daily office isn't having quiet time devotions. It isn't getting filled up for the day or praying for the people and all the needs around you. It isn't doing your daily scripture reading. Oh, all those things are important and they help grow our relationship with God. But the daily office isn't adding something to your to-do list. It's an opportunity for you to pause and to be still before the Lord, to be quiet before God and let God do His work in you. So today, on Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent, I want to introduce you to the daily office, to show you a way to stay connected to God in the blizzards of your life. Now, you might not be familiar with Lent. Maybe you didn't come from any church background, and maybe the church that you came from didn't practice it. But Lent is the 40 days, not counting Sundays, so you'll never see this devotion on Sunday before Easter. Lent was introduced early in the 4th century, and it was a time of preparation for new believers prior to their baptism on Easter Sunday. 40 is an important biblical number, which is why it's the 40 days of Lent, because 40 in the Bible is associated with spiritual preparation and times of transition. Think about the 40 days that it rained on Noah's Ark, or the 40 years that the Israelites wandered in the wilderness, or the 40 days that Jesus fought and wrestled with Satan's temptations in the desert. For Catholics, Lent is a time to sacrifice by giving up something. Many Catholics don't eat meat on Fridays during Lent, which is why fish fries are such a big deal on Fridays in Western Pennsylvania. But this year, instead of giving up something, or this year, instead of doing nothing to prepare our hearts for Easter, I want to invite you to make a commitment to pause every day of Lent. So the first thing you do is decide what time works best for you, and decide how long you want to just sit in silence with God. This is a new thing for me too, and after 5 weeks I'm finally up to 2 minutes at the beginning and 2 minutes at the end. So a minute or two at the beginning and a minute or two at the end will be a great start. After your time of silence, that's when you'll turn on the next day this daily video, which will focus on one word for each day of Lent. Each video will conclude with an activity that links the word of the day to the rest of your day. And when the video is over, spend another minute or two in silence with God. All in all, it shouldn't take you more than 5 or 6 minutes in a day. This is something you can do as a family together, as a couple, with a friend, or alone. But I do encourage you to share your experience with at least one other person. And if you're watching this on Facebook, to make a comment maybe at some point as to what is happening as you do this. Now I want to issue a disclaimer. I am using a book by Trevor Hudson called Pauses for Lent, 40 Words for 40 Days. And that's the basis of my devotionals. Some days I may just read them as is. Other days I may personalize them or even create my own meditation and activity. I will post daily on Facebook at 7 a.m. for those of you who want to do this early in the day, and we will embed these daily posts into our website by 9 a.m. each day. I pray that as you do this 40 words for 40 days in Lent with me, that you will sense anew the presence of God. You will sense anew His enormous love for you as He meets you in the blizzard and busyness of your life. So for day 1, the word is dust, which makes perfect sense since it's Ash Wednesday. You are dust, Genesis 3:19 says, and to dust you shall return. We've got lots of dust in our house. We've been having fires quite a few days and all this cold. But on the first day of Lent, which the church calls Ash Wednesday, many people have their foreheads crossed with ashes as a reminder that we are creatures of dust. We are fragile, fallible, fallen human beings. From the moment we emerge from our mother's wombs, we begin the process of dying. To think that one day we will be nothing but dust, nothing but ashes, is a pretty grim reality. Not surprisingly, many of us avoid facing this truth. It's not something we want to reflect on, or speak about, or even read about, or think about. After all, when we begin to sense how next to nothing we are, we can easily find ourselves in despair. Being born to die is not good news. However, the fact that we are marked with the sign of the cross in that dust tells us that we're infinitely more to God than dust. You and I are God's beloved, and nothing, not even death, can separate us from God's love through Jesus Christ. That cross that we would put on our forehead is a symbol of God's love for us. He chose to die so that we could live. Our dust, our bodies, our lives are charged with God's own life-sustaining and death-defeating breath. We are beloved dust, not plain old fireplace dust, but beloved dust. Here's your daily practice for today. At some point today, I want you to go outside and pick up a handful of soil. Now, for some of you up here in Pennsylvania, you may have to dig through a little bit of snow to do that, but I want you to get a handful of soil, or even just a fingerful of soil, and focus on these two symbols, dust and the cross. Because even when the dust is wiped off your forehead when you come home after Ash Wednesday services, you remember the identity that you really are, who you really are, because you are a child of God and your dust is redeemed by the cross. The word today for Ash Wednesday is dust. Genesis 3:19. You are dust, and to dust you shall return.